Hello, my name is Olivia, and today I'll be discussing my final paper project for my senior seminar class concerning the topic of opioid use disorder in U.S. prisons. Within my paper and corresponding PowerPoint, I analyzed the increasing rates of opioid use disorder in correctional facilities and the issues within the U.S. prison system that have come to light, unfortunately, because they are the main proponent in this crisis. So now it is important to discuss the difference between opioid use disorder and opioid use. Opioids or opiates are chemicals that reduce pain in the body and brain by collaborating with opioid receptors to reduce the perceptions of pain. And these opioids are also classified as synthetic and semi-synthetic, and it creates a stronger reaction from users compared to natural opioids. So some opioids, such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, codeine, morphine, heroin, and fentanyl, are all examples, but fentanyl is known to be at least 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. But according to the DSM-5, opioid use disorder is defined as a pattern of opioid use that becomes problematic over time and produces impairment or stress. This pattern can lead to an individual taking larger amounts because of tolerance and having the persistent desire and urge to use opioids, halting their school, work, home, personal life, and it allows the individual to experience many social and interpersonal problems because of this disorder. And there are many problems that cause unfortunate circumstances, such as disabilities, relapsing, overdose, and death. The difference between opioid use disorder and opioid use is when a person does not use opioids often, simply, and they have not developed their addiction, they do not use this opioid daily, and they have not been through a withdrawal where they have developed a pattern that allows them to become reliant and dependent on an opioid that would increase the likelihood of them experiencing a withdrawal. So, the history of the opioid epidemic, of course, dates back centuries, and in the 1800s, there was no legislation concerning medications like opioids, and patients were able to get these medications for something as minuscule as a headache. However, now we are facing three different waves where it is classified that these prescription opioids are contributing to the rise in overdose deaths, heroin overdose deaths, and synthetic opioid overdose deaths. And as you can see here, the three different waves that are included in the 1990s, there was a rise in prescription opioid overdose deaths. In 2010, there was a rise in overdose deaths concerning heroin, and in 2013, there started the rise of synthetic opioid overdose deaths. So, concerning opioid use disorder in the US prison system, obviously they are all victims of this opioid epidemic, and the prison system has about 2 million individuals who are incarcerated, and that makes us the highest incarceration rate in the world. And obviously, when there is half of the individuals suffering from opioid use disorder, as later noted in my slides, it's critical to note that these individuals are at higher risk of becoming addicted to opioids post-release and while incarceration. And the criminalization of drugs does not help, and it is one of the leading reasons as to why mass incarceration and the high opioid use disorder rates exist. So, as you can see here, the availability of these treatment programs and medications for opioid use disorders are given barriers, and not all individuals who are suffering are able to be provided with the support and needed medication. Concerning buprenorphine and methadone, about 67% of states lack the funds needed to provide this medication, which already shows how these rates are affecting those individuals incarcerated, and they are not getting the much needed treatment that is actually proven to work. And this is another supplementary figure that shows that only half of the people in state prisons that are suffering from substance abuse disorder are receiving treatment. And these individuals with substance use disorder, only half of the individuals that are suffering are receiving treatment, but half of the population of prisons contains individuals who are suffering from substance use disorder. And not a lot of offenders are provided with post-release programs that may help them not relapse while they integrate back into society. Now on to my theoretical review portion. For my theoretical review, one of the theories I discussed was strain theory, and this is evident in opioid use disorder in the prison system because these individuals are given certain strains, and when they're inflicted upon a person, these strains can create stress and gives an individual the more likelihood of being involved in crime or drug use. Um, this drug use or crime is used as a coping mechanism and to alleviate some of the emotional strains that incarcerated individuals experience. They are often seen engaging in illegal or illicit drug uses, and more oftentimes than not, these drugs are opioids that may or may not contain fentanyl. This theory highlights the overall negative effect in the experience that is known to affect criminal activity. And these repeated strains an incarcerated individual may experience just weakens their overall quality of life. Another theory to discuss is social learning theory, and this shows that some people learn to commit crimes through the same process through which others learn to conform. So, when individuals are experiencing other incarcerated individuals in jail, they might have their behavior influenced by others, and their cognition and environment and social interactions all create the basis for their social learning at that time. Um, when individuals are in prisons, they're more likely to engage in what other prisoners are experiencing, while when they also return to their usual environment post release, they are seen to engage in drug use again and more likely to fall victim to drug use after being released. So, through my methodological review, I studied three main methodologies that were used through the studies I researched. And these three methodologies were secondary data analysis, experimental programs, and self report surveys. In secondary data analysis, the data already exists, and researchers are basically building upon that data. It's used to find answers to questions, and it can include surveys, data, and etc. Experimental programs are controlled observations and conditions that measure variables and the exposure of conditions of the studied experiences. Self-report surveys are simple as such. They're surveys that one reports themselves and they're used widely in the research field of criminal justice and crime and victimization. Now, on to discussing the ethical concerns I have detailed in my paper, which are deflecting from harm and the collaborative care from professionals. Obviously, there can be many given ethical concerns when it comes to drug use, but the two actors in discussion that I linked ethics to was the National Certification Commission for Addiction Professional Code of Ethics and the American Psychological Association Ethical Principles of Psychologists and Code of Conduct. So, as a psychologist or a medical professional that works in a prison setting, the goal is to deflect from harm. But when an individual is entered into the system with substance or opioid use disorder, a medical professional or psychologist is given the ethical dilemma of having an inmate who needs health care but does not have enough resources available or allocated. So, when a professional is trying to help an inmate who needs care, and are not given enough resources, it makes them decide whether or not an individual can live without the needed resources and if they can treat them without those resources. But also, the collaborative care from professionals is another ethical dilemma or concern. When there is not enough allocation of resources, obviously there has much to do with prison management and how they need to become more better in prioritizing the opioid crisis. And there are individuals who are suffering more significantly, which gives care professionals the ethical dilemma of deciding whether who to treat first. And the confidentiality of these incarcerated individuals are of top concern because it is not something that they want shared when they're going through a situation as sensitive as a disorder. So now to wrap everything up, the rates of 1 in 10 individuals in state prisons suffering from substance use disorder receiving treatment is a very concerning rate, and that fact itself just proves that individuals in jails and prisons are suffering and they are experiencing neglecting treatment. There should be more policies in place that should mandate quality and substantial care for individuals who have opioid use disorder in prisons, and that will then pave the way toward rates going downward for the victims of this public health crisis. Through my research and the future research that could entail, this will lead to a better solutions and how U.S. prison system can provide better treatments and programs for individuals suffering from opioid use disorder. I thank you guys so much for watching my presentation, and I hope I taught you a little bit of something about how opioid use disorder is a significant issue within the US prison system and how we can hopefully combat this crisis in the future. Thank you so much.